when you highlight everything, you highlight nothing. That is the sad truth of life. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Here we talk about all things related to stationery, planners, productivity, organization, and in general trying to live your best life. And if that interests you, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Today we're talking about how to remember everything that you have studied or learned. So right now, a lot of people have their board exams going on. My sister herself is in class 12 CBSE. So I know it's a very stressful time for everyone. And when I was back in school, there are a few tricks that helped me and a few things that I learned off of many YouTube videos actually during that time and during my time in college that really helped me remember a lot of the things that I have learned. And this is why I'm making this video, so that I can consolidate all of the things that I remember from that time and the tricks that I had used in hopes that it helps some of you. So let's get started. So at this point in your study journey, I'm guessing that you have attended all your lectures, your notes are ready and made, and you've read through your textbook. Now what can you do practically to make yourself remember more of the material that you are learning? The first thing is very obvious, and if you're doing this in a public place, it might make you look a little silly, but it's definitely worth it, which is talking aloud. When I was young, my mom always used to tell me that, read aloud. Whatever you're studying, just say it aloud. And first, it's really helpful in not getting distracted, because if you're just reading in your mind, most of us tend to get really distracted. Like I would constantly be drifting into random daydreams while I was reading my text, and just reading aloud helps me stay more accountable. Obviously, I don't mean like scream out your lessons at the top of your voice at 2 a.m. That's not what I'm saying, but just reading aloud like this medium is also really helpful. So if you can record a video of yourself reading aloud your chapters, you won't get distracted. Your phone has a job, you are not going to be scrolling on it. You are also more likely to remember because you're hearing at the same time that you're speaking. So that kind of helps you solidify whatever material you are reading, and it's a very, very underrated but really effective tip. Second thing, which I also used very much during school, especially for subjects which I was not very excited about. So what I would do is I would break up my chapter into different parts. So if say it was for physics, then first day I would do the definitions. Next I would do the main concepts or maybe some examples. And the final day I would do the problem sums. In this way, I have covered the whole chapter, but also I am not trying to do many different kinds of things in one day and confusing my brain. And like for definitions, you have to memorize. So that is the day that I'm focused on memorizing things. Then for problem solving, it's more of practical application. So I'm just solving all day and I'm not like interchanging the two things that I have to do. So I feel like different parts of my brain are occupied on different things. So it's better to group things like that within a particular subject or within a particular chapter, so it helps you focus better. Third, I am a visual learner through and through. So I always use mind maps and charts and flashcards, you name it. And I have all of these listed in my note-taking video. Please look at it. I'm sure you'll find it helpful. So I used to make extensive mind maps for all of my chapters, and more often than not, I was able to condense whatever I've learned in one chapter within one sheet of paper, and it really helps in testing your memory. So I would suggest that after you are done studying one chapter, whatever you can remember from memory, just write it down. And if there are blanks, within the concepts, or if you're studying history and you don't remember some of the dates or some of the events, then it is really helpful to zero in on the parts which are not clear to you, as opposed to if you're just reading a chapter, then you feel like you know everything. But your actual test comes when you have to write, because in any exam you have to reproduce from memory, and if you can't remember it, and if you are testing yourself in this way, then you identify it then and there that where your gaps are and you can fill them in. And if you repeat this process a few times in one study session, then definitely you'll remember the whole thing really well. Watch till the end of the video to see the two most important and effective ways to remember most of the material that you have studied. In addition to visual learning, there is also a very useful tool for learning which is called mnemonics. So that is basically a pattern of like letters or ideas which when formed together, they give you association to the word that helps you in remembering an important concept. So the most common example would be Roy G. Biv, which is basically the colors of the rainbow. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Then there's another one which was super common when I was a kid, that is remembering the 9 planets of the solar system. And yes, there were 9 when I was in school. So that was my very educated mother just served us 9 pickles. So you have all of the planets in that order. There's also another tool which is an acronym. So you can take the first letters of all of the topics maybe that you are doing. If you take the first letters of that and you put them in somewhat a word with just the first letters, that becomes an acronym. A mnemonic is a kind of an acronym, so you make it sound like something that is ridiculous but also something that you would remember. These really help you when you're trying to memorize something which is in an order or a sequence, or maybe just like name 5 kinds of X or 3 kinds of Y and things like that. So yeah, so acronyms and mnemonics are also super helpful in remembering important things. I've talked about Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve before, and where this concept came from is that he tried to memorize a list of words and it took him way less time on the 3rd day than it took him on the 1st day, which basically says that if you keep repeating the study session and if you keep studying it again and again, then the time it takes for you to learn and remember, it reduces. So that's why in order to remember something for the long term, you need to space out your repetition but also do it at regular intervals so that you forget less and less. And that was a very novel idea for me at that point, because up until then I was just studying for an exam and then I was done with it, and then I was revising it again before my final exams or something. It's not like I completely forgot everything I had done for the test, but it wasn't at top of my mind, right? So this method actually helps you remember a lot more than you would normally have. As soon as our study session ends, we've already begun forgetting. There's something called spaced repetition, which helps us in forming better connections in our brain so that over a period of time, we remember things better. And I will insert the graph here, what it looks like. And basically what it means is if you keep revising after certain intervals of time, then your memory of that thing solidifies and you tend to forget it less and less. So eventually the curve does not even reach that dip. You remember almost all of the material that you have studied from the beginning, provided that you keep revising it at a certain period of time, like say after 1 week, then 1 month, and so on. So as long as you're in touch with it, you're never going to forget it completely. And this thing is gold if you tie it with another study method, which is called an active recall. This is by far the best way by which you can actually memorize things and remember them for the long term, and not be one of those people like I was in school. As soon as the exam was done, I would forget it. But this is something that I learned much later and I highly recommend it. So I'll tell you a story. In school, I had just received highlighters and I thought highlighting everything would mean that I would remember everything. But that was a lie, as we all know now. When you highlight everything, you highlight nothing. That is the sad truth of life. And highlighting just makes you think that you recognize it. You don't actually remember it. This word looks familiar, but you don't actually remember the concept. You wouldn't know how to solve a problem with this concept. So it gives you a false illusion that you know this thing. Whereas if you recall something, that is remembering, recalling from memory, reproducing from memory. So if you are practicing active recall, it would essentially mean things like looking at flashcards and trying to remember the definitions. If you are doing some practice problems, you are solving past year's question papers, and these are the most effective ways to remember something and increase your memory of it. So I will vouch by solving past papers because that is the most effective way of consolidating your learning for any kind of exam. For all of my boards, for all of my semester exams in college and in undergrad and in post-graduation, I have always relied on past papers, and that has been the best way to test my knowledge, to cover all of my gaps, and also to ensure that I do well in the coming exams. It gives me a lot of confidence thinking that these are the kind of questions that are possible in coming in papers, and I have already seen types of these questions. So that will anyway give you a confidence. That's why, for boards, you have these 10-year question papers and people flock to it with good reason. Even if you are like in your boards years, I would recommend that you should do the sample papers which are available. Like they already have a few mock papers and stuff, and time yourself and do it in that particular time and then check it. This is the best way to practice active recall. And if you have some time before your exams, then you should try to do one of these papers at like those regular intervals so that you are always fresh with the material and you don't forget it. So that was the video, guys. I hope this was informative for you. I hope you took away something useful from it. And for everyone who's giving exams right now, all the very best. I hope you do really well. And I'll see you next week with a new video. Bye.